Hey guys, I'm Hannah Cox with Base Politics, and you're watching my show History Onyx, where every week we talk about women's issues from a centrist point of view. If you like this episode, don't forget you can like, comment, subscribe, or if you're listening on audio, you can go leave me a review or share the show with your friends. This week we have to talk about the Reddit post that broke the internet. I don't know if you guys remember the blue dress versus gold dress dispute from a number of years ago. This is literally that, but it is a litmus test to see the difference in how men and women think. I think this is fascinating. I think communication is really hard. I think we often undervalue just how difficult good communication can be. And I also think because there's this huge push, particularly coming from the left these days, to make everybody equal and everybody the same and like genders are fluid and they don't matter. I think we forget just how different men and women are wired. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's actually, I think, a lot of beauty in that. But this Reddit post put that on full display. And you can't tell me nothing after watching this discourse go down. Men and women simply are different. They think differently. They value things differently. They communicate differently. And we're going to talk about it all today because I think there's so many valuable lessons we can extrapolate from this debate. So, first and foremost, let me just read you the actual Reddit post that went so viral. The title says, I think I destroyed our relationship trying to compliment my boyfriend. My boyfriend and I are both 28 years old and together for 2.5 years. Yesterday night, we were drinking and one thing led to another, and I tried to compliment him by saying he is not someone who I would hook up with or be a friends with benefit with, but marry. I thought everything was fine, but he seemed extremely distraught after that. I realized how he understood it and tried to clarify it, but he is still the same this morning. He told me he needs space to think for a while and left the house. All my friends tell me I messed it up, and guys tell me it's not a compliment and most men will understand it differently. I think I destroyed our relationship and I am panicking right now. Okay, so I watched this post circulate for probably at least a couple of hours before I weighed in. And when I first saw it, it just, I don't know, I didn't see this and think like this is going to go viral, right? It just seemed like a run of the mill Reddit post. But as I kept watching Twitter and seeing it pop up in my newsfeed time after time after time, and then I started reading the comments under many of these posts, I was locked in, guys, because the initial people sharing it were accounts mostly run by men, many of them who were in the sort of like red pill apparatus. And it was like watching animals at a zoo get fed. Okay. Like I could not look away. It was so interesting watching them dissect this, react to it, and how it came across to them. And I was captivated, as I think many women were. So, in order to set up this discussion, I'm going to have to take you down like a bit of a rabbit hole to catch you up on the conversation, but I promise I will pull us back up. I promise you'll see daylight after this, but I'm going to start with the men's response to this post. How do you like that, men? Letting you go first. Okay, so the first account I saw share it is this account, Rothmus. I love Rothmus. We followed each other for years. Obviously, like it's an anonymous account, but this is a good follow. So don't judge him badly based on this. But he shared the Reddit post and he said, in no scenario whatsoever is this a compliment. And his post was going viral. I mean, his posts often go viral, but this one was going mega viral. There were so many people responding to it. I'll just read you a few of them. One person says she called him boring but useful. Another said she just said she doesn't find him attractive but will settle for him to take care of her. It's an effing insult. She literally called him beta bucks. Another person said, you're safe but not hot. Somebody else said, you're the dependable guy that can financially support me when I'm ready to settle down and get off this cock carousel. Ugh, you guys, the things I have to repeat on the show, I cannot. Anyways, they say, wow, that would be an instant breakup. Another person said, that was basically saying, I have no raw libido from me. You're the nice guy I settle for. Emasculating. And I obviously am not going to read you every single person I saw commenting on this, but I'll flash just a few more examples on the screen. Like it was all I could see on Twitter for a solid day. Another thread on this I found particularly interesting was from this account, French OG, which again seems to be like kind of a red pill type person, but he shared the post and he said, this is a common woman mistake. Women value emotional connection over hookups, but guys would prefer being the hookup guy than the guy who she does not hook up with but marry. Tips for women. If you want or care about a guy you want to be with, make him feel like he was originally the hookup type guy who eventually ended up being the boyfriend and lead with action. Too many make the mistake thinking the compliment the opposite way by making them work hard to get I'm not saying this word, making them work hard to get the action because they like him and missing out on great connections. The categorization they make in their heads is what holds them back from getting the deep, meaningful relationships they seek or want. Sex is valued higher by guys more than emotional connections. In other words, because female genitalia is seen as the prize, the bigger the discount, the more she actually likes him in guys' lens. If he is seen as the guy she would not hook up with, he understands he had to negotiate her desire, which did not come string free. For women, they use their genitalia as a commodity when younger, but emotional connection is the prize. So to her, she believes it is a compliment, but she is selling a vegan nutrition plan to a paleo diet guy. This is not to say guys don't value emotional connection. They do. It is just what do you lead with when you want to sell the idea of relationships as a woman. Here, she was in a relationship and literally pressed on the nuclear button. He then followed that up by saying to add another common mistake of woman, it should be women, is another projection, which is he just wanted sex. Because the guy tried to make a move early in the interaction phase when dating. He can be wanting something more or not. Nobody knows until things happen. uh, I think a lot of people do know if they want something more or not before they hook up with somebody, but okay. But he goes on to say, but because that is what a lot of women do, hook up fast with guys they don't really care about fast as little risk to them. They believe that is what the guy does, screwing up the momentum and or not catering to the guy's ego in the dating phase. So first and foremost, there's just so much technically wrong with this post. Like, you think women incur less risk hooking up? What? But anyways, let's set aside the fact that a lot of this is nonsense. What I thought was so interesting were the responses to him. I'll read you a few of those. One person said, I've always been told that women don't even consider it a relationship until you sleep with them. That's why I always try to take it quickly, especially if I'm interested in something more serious. If she won't sleep with you easily, something is wrong. Another person said, kind of living this now. Been seeing this girl for almost 2 weeks who won't screw because she's trying to be traditional, yet is very invested emotionally and physically limited. I'm not going to insist to sleep with her, but at what point do I say, so what now? Another person said, she just handed and read the crystal ball to this fella. This type of gal, yes, would marry him. She also fits the profile of the typical cheating wife. Wives cheat but don't want a divorce because they do love their husbands, just not for sexual fulfillment. Dude needs to run the other way and not go down this rabbit hole. Another said, ideally, she would want both. The hookup guy will always be more desirable than the marry only guy, and we all understand this deep down. Someone else said, it's never a badge of honor to be the guy she would marry over hooking up, just means it would never last anyway. Somebody else said they just refuse to accept this point of view and resort to blaming the one that got hurt feelings for being hurt. And then lastly, somebody said, how often do you see each other? If she's not hooking up with you after at most 3 times, ignore her and move on. Now, obviously, this is pretty bleak discourse, but it was fascinating to me because it actually countered a narrative that women often believe around men, right? Which is when a man is pushing for sex early on, a lot of women are taught to believe that they're just a player, they're only after one thing, like they're more likely to hook up with them and then ghost or disappear. And basically what these men are saying is not that. They are saying that if a woman doesn't hook up with them pretty quickly, they don't feel validated. They don't feel like they have a real shot at moving the relationship forward. It's a really big red flag to them, which is so fascinating because these are the same guys that literally wax on and on about body counts and women being too promiscuous. And yet this is their mentality. And it sounds like most of them are being very, very aggressive early on and encountering women that they might be interested in, which is why this entire time I always said all along, when we talk about the birth rate, or we talk about the fact that people aren't getting married, or we talk about hookup culture and why it's problematic, go talk to the men, okay? According to you guys, men are the natural leaders and so strong and wise and logical. So go talk to them because they're not leading on this issue. And in fact, it sounds like they're doing the opposite. And I actually think, as I'll talk about more in this episode, they are so wrong about women and how women think and what makes them tick. It's crazy. But it is quite obvious that this is the dominant view and reaction that men had to this post. Now, after watching all of this circulate and build for like a day, I think women started weighing in, me included. And first and foremost, I wanted to actually just try to translate what the girl said, how she meant it for the men, because I I think that while she might have not been super eloquent, probably because she was drinking, like she said, to me, if you've been dating somebody for 2.5 years, you should know them well enough to be able to get past somebody not saying something to you perfectly. And I like tested this post out on my husband and a few like other men around me just to see. And fortunately, I think that men who are in relationships, men who have had success in relationships, are more likely to see nuance in this and to like give the benefit of the doubt. Whereas men who are hostile towards women, who have had a lot of failed relationships with women, who are untrusting of women or dislike women, and as a whole, who are just like more insecure about themselves in general, were more likely to have the reactions like the ones I read to you. But because I actually want to help men and women get along better, I posted her translation for this discussion. What she's saying is that she is more than physically attracted to her boyfriend. That is a given in a 2.5-year relationship. Okay. Like this idea that women are just in mass, like getting with men they're not attracted to and wanting to marry men they're not attracted to is red pill brain rot. It's so false. It's so wrong. Who wants to sign up for a life of not being physically attracted to your spouse? Like, yes, are there some women who enter transactional relationships and like basically accept that that's going to be a factor? There are. I covered them last week on the show, but that is not the norm. That's not the average. So like whether or not she's physically attracted to him, like that should be a given in this conversation. But what she's saying is that she's more attracted to his mind and to his character, and she wants to be devoted to him forever because of that. He is like above all men in her book. She's saying, like, I could never have just had a casual fling with you because I see you up here. And I think what's lost in translation is how much women actually look down on the like F boys and player types that they've encountered. But because in the red pill communities, they actually like idolize these guys, right? They have this whole like Chad narrative. They want to be him so badly. To them, they want to be seen as the player and the hookup more than they want to be seen as like the actual man of character that a woman might want to marry. It's completely screwed up. But because they see it that way, they project that onto women. When in reality, like go actually talk to some women. Oh my God. Like on every front, guys, in this whole online vortex, go talk to women in real life. And like I think you'll back off of a lot of this because it's just so far from the truth. But like women are sexual beings just like men are. They hook up with people for a multitude of reasons. Often, many of them are like negatives, right? They're lonely, they're bored, they're drunk, they want validation. It's not that women just like see an alpha man or like, oh my God, I can't resist him. I'm going to hook up with him. No, like, in fact, as I pointed out and will continue to say throughout this episode, when women are actually really, really attracted to a guy and very into him and really want it to move forward, they are less likely to hook up with you fast because they don't want to ruin it because they've been told over and over that's how you ruin it. And also because they've been told that if you conduct yourself in that way, he will just ghost you and leave you. So if they are hooking up with a man very quickly, it's often because they like look at you pretty lowly and like don't really care if they never see you again. Now, I will say there were a couple people who suggested in my comments that like maybe something else was going on here with him. One person said, I think everyone is reading this wrong. They're assuming that he's insecure. Reality is that he's just learned that his girlfriend has engaged in hookups and friends with benefits culture. He knows that she's got an unexpectedly high body count and now knows that he must retreat from a woman he likes. I'm sorry, if you were dating somebody for 2.5 years and you didn't have a pretty solid understanding of their sexual history, that's weird. That's really weird. Like, I don't think that that's probably it, but I'll include it just to cover the bases. Another person said, what if, just wait and hear me out, this person just doesn't want to get married to her? Maybe they've never talked about it before, then she brings it up and he freaks out because he's just fine with getting the milk without buying the cow, but thinks she's pressuring marriage. Thus, absolutely nothing to do with a perceived compliment or not. She's just been wasting 2.5 years in her prime with a douche. Now she's free to find a real man who values her too. This is highly likely in my book because if you are of the ages she mentions and you've been dating for 2.5 years, like, what's going on, buddy? What's the holdup? I truly don't understand. So, yeah, could be that. At the end of the day, we don't have any more context than what is given, though. And really, like, my interest in this discussion is so much more about the reactions to it versus the Reddit post itself. So, I'm just going to set those things aside and move forward. Now, I want to read you some of the responses from women to this post because this is where the conversation really gets interesting. This is from a Twitter account, the Echo 13, also a good follow. She says this woman gave him the highest compliment. She thinks he's husband material and someone she wants to spend her life with. He threw a fit because he wants to be thought of as a womanizing player, even to his girlfriend of 2.5 years. Another Twitter user, Marissa Doom, said men not understanding that saying someone is someone you'd marry, not just hook up with, is a compliment. You also have sex with someone you're married to. It means I want you as my partner in life and sexuality. Idiots. Which, like, yeah, again, like, the fact that that just went right over their heads, like, it really does seem most of these men think that the majority of women, okay, because that is how they are reacting, as if, like, this is just the rank and file stereotype. The majority of women are not sexually attracted to the men that they marry and are just looking for somebody to, like, pay their bills, which doesn't make sense because most men can't pay your bills. Most households in the US are, like, two people working. Another woman with the handle Philosophy Cat said the responses to this are so revealing. A hookup is someone who is a throwaway person to you who's only good for one night of fun and who you don't really care to see again. Someone you want to marry is not someone you begin a relationship with by treating them like a throwaway. But a lot of the men in the comments believe this indicates the woman isn't sexually attracted to him and only wants him for his resources, as if women aren't perfectly capable of having their own resources in this day and age. The kind of men who buy into that sort of narrative are almost exclusively one, men who have had little success in relationships, either in forming them or in maintaining them, and two, men who are insecure about their own sexual attractiveness to women. They project their own sexuality onto women. For these men, being found sexually attractive is the most important thing because it's what most of them are insecure about. It's also the primary and sometimes only way in which they value women. And because they are men who are unsuccessful in relationships, they are the type of men who are the least likely to understand what makes women tick. Men who are successful at long term relationships tend to understand women far better than men who struggle to attract and keep women. Mic drop. Like, yeah, this mentality is absolutely an insecure man's mentality who doesn't have a lot of experience or like success with women, right? They're very insecure about being seen as attractive to women. They really want to be seen as attractive to women, and they overvalue that because that's all they really value. They don't have very good, strong character. I've said this over and over. People are attracted to other people with their same like values and same like level of character, right? And so if you have low character and you're only attracted to women for their looks, that means that you desperately want to be valued for your looks as well. That is fortunately and simply not where most women are coming from. Most women are more evolved than that and value men for far more than just their looks, and also can become very attracted to men who are not quantifiably all that attractive, because to women attraction comes so much more from like your mind and your character and other, attachments that she has to you versus just like your pure physical being. And this is why the whole like Chad narrative and like she hooks up fast with the alpha narrative is hilarious. It's so far removed from an actual understanding of how women think, how they become attached to people, how they form relationships. And probably that's why a lot of these guys do not have a lot of success with women, because they fundamentally misunderstand them and they are not curious enough to even try to correct that. I responded to this guy on Twitter by the handle Governor Megatron. He said, "We want to be the men women want with genuine, non negotiable desire, not the ones they just settle with at the end." Like, I feel like you've been reading romance novels, my guy. Like, I really do. I feel like if I looked at your bookshelf, there'd be like that 1980s guy with the long hair and the like chiseled abs on the cover of the book. I feel like he has some of those. Like, that's this is fantasy. This is not how women operate. I said this is such a mismatch in beliefs and in reality. Men don't seem to realize that just as they often hook up with people they aren't all that attracted to or don't see long term potential with, so do women. It's often a lot more about loneliness, boredom, an ego stroke, being drunk, or just being in the mood for women too. The fact men think a hookup means the woman is just overcome with attraction to them is high key funny. Meanwhile, women's attraction and genuine desire increases drastically for a man when she is mentally and emotionally attached to him. Women get 10 times more turned on by a man's mind and their emotional connection than they ever do based on looks alone. So, yeah, I just think their premises were really wrong. They were interesting. They were interesting to listen to and observe, but they were really wrong on like the very foundation of how they were approaching this. The other thing and dominant trend I thought that emerged was just in how differently men and women value marriage. And this is one of those things that I think is pretty much like 100% a social conditioning. I think that everybody biologically innately likes to have a partner, likes to have company, like does better in life when they have a significant other to lean on. But women are the ones who have been conditioned socially to pursue marriage, to chase marriage, to want marriage. And that's been done through a number of factors over time. You know, historically, we had structures where women could not work, could not buy houses, could not even open banking accounts without being married. And while many of those things under the law have actually been rectified, we still have a lot of social conditioning that happens. Like, even just in the fact that, you know, when you get married, you go from being an MS to a Mrs., right? We have all these like status kind of ascendancy things that we do to encourage women to want to get married. You get big parties thrown for you. You get this big wedding where you're the center of attention for the day. Like, you get to have a big diamond ring on your hand. We have all these things that make women want to chase marriage. And when they aren't married, we do a lot of things to bully them and make them feel isolated and outcast. And so women still have a lot more pressure on them. And so they really do value marriage more than men. And again, this is why I keep saying to people who are concerned with the birth rate or telling women they should get married young, go talk to the men. Women don't need this lesson. Women are already there. Go talk to the men. And I think this is a actual really big problem in our society that needs to be addressed, needs to be countered, because when you have men who value being like the hookup guy over being the actual like man of character that a woman would want to marry, you're going to get a really shitty pool of men. And I feel like that's been the experience for women who are trying to date right now. Women are told that being marriage material means that you have like all of these attributes and characteristics that are desirable. Men should feel the same way, and it's true. Most women don't want to marry somebody that they see as a deadbeat, that they see as stupid, that they wouldn't want to pass their genes on with, that they wouldn't want to endanger their bodies via pregnancy for. Like, being a man who is worthy of marriage is a good thing to aspire to. And that's something that men should be, you know, being taught or encouraged to pursue. But instead, because of this lack of leadership in our society, because of this lack of male figureheads who can meaningfully like speak to these young men, because of the lack of fathers in the home, we have this huge void for a lot of men that is now being filled by these red pill charlatans in very negative and damaging ways. And I see all the time people, men in the comments of the show being like,
why is this show anti-man?
it's not. It's pro man. I want you to succeed in life. I want you to succeed in relationships. I want you to be a happy and whole and healthy person. And I know that if you fall into the red pill vortex, none of those things will be true for you. I'm on your side. It's the red pill grifters who are out to get you and who are going to be completely destructive and toxic in your life. Not only are men and women taught to value marriage differently, though, I think they're taught to value relationships in general differently. And I think this really seeped out in this discourse a good bit. I've already countered a lot of the completely made up narratives the red pill has around marriage and divorce and like the risk and the benefits of it. And as a whole, the data shows conclusively that men continue to benefit more than women from marriage on virtually every attribute you could count. They live longer, they make more money, they're happier, they get kids out of it. Whereas women often die younger, have lower rates of happiness. If and when they divorce, they are more likely to be left in poverty. They also risk their physical health because they are so much more likely to be abused or even killed by their partner. And yet these myths seem to continue to perpetrate in the red pill communities where they genuinely will sit there with a straight face and be like,
there's no reason for men to get married. The system benefits women.
what? And this came up a lot in this discourse. Okay. I saw a ton of men basically saying that, like, this guy's upset because he's going to have to be in a long-term relationship and or marry this girl in order to get like the sexual benefits, I guess. And so they were saying like he's having to pay full price what others can get for free. And I really like this response from a Twitter account, Real Diane Yap. She said, men are upset about paying full price for what others got for free. What's this price you're paying? Spending time with her? Taking her on a date? If those are costs you feel that burden you instead of a bonus that you're happy you get and other guys don't, then go find someone you actually like, not just someone you only value for sex. That sums it up perfectly. This is the mentality of a user. If you don't find the actual component, like the actual relationship components of a relationship to be beneficial, and it's just the sex you're after, you're a creep and you should just go pay for that and leave these women alone. After reading this discourse for what felt like an eternity, I weighed in a third and last time, I think by my count, and I felt the need to set the record straight on much of the dialogue I was seeing from the men. And so I wrote this. I said, in conclusion of the millions of impressions and hundreds of thousands of engagements I've absorbed across this app in response to this Reddit post, a few dominant themes emerge, and I think it would behoove men to hear them. One, a woman being truly attracted to you has so much more to do with the whole package, not your looks. Women are not driven by the same things you are. They can become absurdly attracted to the ugliest man you've ever seen in ways even they acknowledge are deranged, but cannot be helped due to the man's personality, character, and her connection to him. The entire red pill brain rot made up around the Chad phenomenon is like literotica for men. Chasing the hottest piece you can possibly obtain and sleeping with as many of them as possible in your 20s is what you would do with sexual power. It's not how women operate, nor is it how most are spending their youth. Women want to be married for the most part and are looking for the whole package. Secondly, women are sexual beings just like men are. And just like many men, many women do categorize men in different categories pretty quickly. While they will hook up with players, they don't like or respect them. In fact, they tend to look down on them. Just like men, women often have flings based on factors other than pure raging attraction and hook up with men they'd never claim in public. Men value being wanted on their looks and looks alone because they don't experience it, because that's not how women tick. It takes more to truly get their interest. I would even argue truly hot men sometimes have a harder time with long term relationships because women assume they'll be players and don't give them the time of day. I seriously almost passed on my husband for this reason. Thankfully, I gave him a chance. True story. So, for a man, they think being wanted just for sex makes them hotter or more desirable, but really, for women, it means they have no fear of losing you, have placed you in a disposable category, and often aren't super impressed with you at all. Which brings me to my third point, which it now seems vitally important to say after reading so many comments from men that get this totally wrong. If a woman has pegged you as the whole package, if she's truly interested and sees major long term potential, if she thinks you're high value or whatever dumb term you're using right now, she's less likely to hook up quickly because she doesn't want to ruin the relationship or be seen as easy. It goes without saying this woman won't be dragging her feet to see you or hesitating to make it official with you. When coupled with those behaviors, like, sure, it's a sign she's not into you and you should move on. But if you're getting all green flags otherwise, except she's delaying sex, that's a very good sign. And of course, despite the fact that literally hundreds of women were saying this to these men throughout the discourse on Twitter, the dominant response was women are liars, women are gaslighters, women don't even know themselves. If you listen to women, you'll never have success with women. After the amount of mental gymnastics I saw, I hope those men drink some electrolytes because it was intense. But the data actually backs this up. And the red pill loves to talk about evolutionary psychology and data, but they don't know how to read it. And when actual psychologists counter their interpretation of the data, they just try to ignore it or refute it or discount it. But the data backs everything I said up on this. This is Alexander. His handle is DatePsych. You should definitely follow him. He is an actual practitioner and he has really good information. And he shared a chart that I'll put on screen for those of you on YouTube. But it says a popular online narrative is that women having casual sex often believe that they are in committed relationships with the man they are having sex with, i.e., the woman who hooks up with Chad and thinks she has a real chance with him and is, foregoing all the other men in the red pill community that she should be paying attention to because she just wants Chad now. That's their whole thing. He says in our data on short-term sexual relationships, most women didn't even want relationships with their short-term partners. Like I said, they see you as low value if you're in that category. Furthermore, he goes on to report that the women also said their short-term partners also didn't want a relationship, so they weren't delusional about that at all. Furthermore, he says short-term sex also didn't even seem to be a strategy to form a relationship for most participants because, like I said, if people actually think you're relationship worthy, they're going to try not to screw it up and act slutty. Like I said, though, they don't actually care about real data when they're presented with it because they are in a cult, okay? They have been indoctrinated into a cult, and trying to talk to them and present them with like logic and facts is like trying to talk to anybody else in a rank and file cult. Like they cannot hear it. They can't. So they're all trying to argue with him on Twitter. And he follows this up with saying, imagine if someone said, I won't believe any of the research showing low rates of racial discrimination. White people lie. If you experience white people in real life, you will see that they are all racist. I have experienced nothing but racism from white people. I trust my experience. Research by white people cannot be trusted either because they will bias it to be pro white or white people hate these hard truths. Just change white people to women, and you have the epistemology of the manosphere. The way that they think and form beliefs is exactly the same as woke activists. It is a postmodern epistemology, suspicious and paranoid, driven entirely by what they believe to be their own lived experience. A lived experience that is somehow not even shared by the majority of other people in the population. In another post, he also dunked on the red pill's refusal to like actually interpret and sit with data. He said, I see comments like these occasionally saying the red pill is data. In 2 decades of existence, the entire red pill community has not produced a single data set. There are no red pill data influencers, for lack of a better term. They spend most of their time trying to tell you why you shouldn't believe data than anything else. The red pill is predominantly a lived experience subculture and epistemology. It has never been one that has appealed to people with high numeracy. Now, one thing that I will offer to the men in this discussion is that many of them they try to make the claim that like women aren't listening to men. Men are trying to express how they feel about something, and the women are not listening and they're pushing back and they're telling them, you're wrong, you heard it wrong, you should communicate better. I don't think that that was actually true. I think the women were listening to the men and very much did understand where the men were coming from. Thus, they were able to psychoanalyze it and respond to it. But just because you're talking about how something makes you feel does not mean your feelings are valid. This is one tweet where they put up a screenshot of someone saying, if a girl told me she never liked me and was only using me for sex, that would be the highest compliment of my life. And the Twitter user said, believing more and more that men and women are just wired differently, nature reinforced by nurture. Roughly 95% of women would find such a statement devastating. And in fact, we expend much forethought and energy trying to avoid this exact situation. Yes, most women would find that statement offensive and most men don't, but that's not because that the men are correct in their feelings, right? It is because they have bad social conditioning. This is not good nor is it normal to feel this way. The fact that you want to be used rather than actually valued for who you are as a person and somebody meaningfully wanting to like dedicate themselves to you and spend their lives with you, you have bad values. Like, I truly do think men and women are wired differently on many, many fronts. And I also just think like how we communicate is quite different. But when it comes to this particular conversation, I don't think that the men's feelings are valid, nor do I think that they are rooted in core truths and principles that we should be championing. And really, in the entire discussion, my impression was it was the men who were refusing to listen and observe because women were offering a ton of feedback to men, okay? And like in very kind and I think and in ways where they really wanted to like enter a dialogue that was peaceful and like uplifting. Like it really wasn't like one side trying to dunk on the other side, at least not the women towards the men, but they were offering a lot of information. They were opening up about the way they see things, even about like their own like, sexual chemistry and like private things in order to try to further this discourse. And instead of listening to them and noticing that maybe men had a lot of bad premises to this, or that like not all men agreed with the red pill community on how you would take this, instead they just kept like piling on and saying women are gaslighting and they're lying and like they're just not listening to men, they're invalidating them. The RFH account on Twitter, which is epic, queen, love her. She said the men are losing it because they don't understand that women also have men they'll sleep with but aren't interested in long term. She went on to say, the more I listen to men, the more I wonder why we are having them partner with women at all. If she has sex with you right away, she's a whore. If she makes you wait, she's using you. If she works, she's a whore. If she stays home, she's a leech who is using you. If she doesn't want kids, she's a whore. If she wants kids, she's using you to have children. If she's independent, she's a whore. If she's dependent, she's using you. That's all we're left with, whore or user, the one who is being screwed, who is weak and pathetic, or the one who is screwing you, who is evil. Frankly, this type of thinking is extremely reminiscent of borderline personality disorder, but that's a thread for another day. The endless paranoia, contradiction, black and white thinking, and impossible demands around it has led me to believe that marriage for men is wholly unnatural and not good. I don't agree with her on that. I think that it is, but I do think that the way men have been conditioned has created a whole bunch of men who would not be good partners right now because of their mentalities, because of the way that they view women. Another Twitter account by the feminist TM said the response from men to the hookup marry discourse shows that many of them are exactly as hysterical and neurotic as women, maybe even more so because they lack the social, emotional intelligence that would otherwise serve as a counterbalance. And like, yeah, this is something I need men to like grasp with both hands, okay? Men are just as emotional as women. They are so emotional. They were so in their feelings about this. And I think they're less capable because they're not conditioned socially to analyze their feelings, to talk about their feelings as women are. So they think that when they do have big emotions, one, they often mislabel it, right? They don't have, they're not emotional. They're just like rightfully angry. They're the big logic ones. No, you're emotional and you are in this instance, you are reacting emotionally and you are processing something emotionally that's not actually grounded in facts or reality. But because they have not been taught to recognize that their feelings are not always valid or to analyze them and figure out where are those feelings coming from, they don't have the emotional intelligence, as she said, to actually effectively counter negative emotions and recognize, like, oh, maybe what I'm feeling isn't actually valid. Maybe this is coming from something within me where I need to rectify that or work on that. I had one such man who responded to me and he said, wait, so the takeaway is that men should change how they feel about things and how they receive compliments, and not that women should be listening to what men are saying about how they take things and realize that what they think is a compliment is not how men take it. And I said, I'm going to tell you something your mommy should have and clearly did not, which is that not all feelings are valid. Women are not the ones being obtuse about the Reddit post. In fact, every single woman I've seen commenting on it not only understands why the man got upset, they've provided analysis on where it comes from, and no one is saying that the girl worded what she said well. But as has been discussed endlessly, where he's coming from is a bad and insecure place that's probably unfit for marriage. The healthy men in the discussion have all had much different responses because they value marriage, or at least can say, I see why this wasn't worded well, but after such a long relationship, you should give the benefit of the doubt and be able to talk this through. If your response to women offering help to men who think and behave like the original guy is this, you're going to be down bad for a while. Yes, sometimes one has a bad mentality or a damaging worldview that is going to keep them miserable and alone. And when you find yourself in said situation, you should want to improve your circumstances and readily take advice from those offering it. Somebody else responded to the conversation he and I were having and said that all the women are doing psychoanalysis on the men and not attempting to gain understanding shows a gigantic lack of empathy. It's rather entertaining watching a group of people who generally disagree with you and think all feelings are valid have a massive meltdown. But I don't think most women think all feelings are valid. Certainly I don't. And secondarily, like, my dude, what? I responded to him and I said, psychoanalysis requires understanding. Like, I mean, come on, cheese and rice. Like, it's just right over their heads, okay? Like, in order to analyze where you're coming from and process it, correctly identify what is making you feel this way, and then counter it, women are listening to you a whole lot better than you've ever been able to listen to them. It is like they are light years ahead of you. I continued to say to him, but that understanding leads to the fact that too many men's worldview is informed by red pill brain rot. They have an incorrect understanding of women, their sexuality, and their values, which leads them to feel anger, insecurity, and bitterness over false premises. And I think that's really the long and short of it, right? Like, if we want the gender war to disparate, which, like, oh my gosh, I do so badly. If we want men and women to be able to better come together, not only in relationships, but also like in building coalitions to achieve better public policy reforms, like just getting along in society, then we have to address some of these things head on. Okay. Like, we're at a pivotal time in our history, I think. And I've thought this for some time. This is one reason I launched the show. We are having to figure out how to get along with one another, how to be of value to one another, how to partner with one another when all things are equal. We're the first people in history who've ever had to do that. It's pretty big, and we're struggling massively right now. And unfortunately, the consequence of that, the consequence of this like gender war it has real like downstream effects when you get into the political system. That's why you often see feminists on the far left, fourth wave feminists on the far left, and then red pill men on the far right starting to argue for public policies that strip people of their individual liberty and really just turning against individualism altogether. It's very, very toxic, very bad, right? Like you have the women over here who are like, all men are trash. And you've got the men over here like all women are whores or users. This is bad. And the unfortunate thing is that as these beliefs continue to push women and men to the further extremes of the political parties, it not only empowers the extremes of the political parties, it actually makes it so much less likely that we will be able to come together and really work where we should be, which is in coming together and fighting the government, which is our true enemy, not men, not women. But in order to get there, I think we really have to nip some of these bad values, these false premises, these mismatched ideas about one another in the bud. And I want to say that while like I have so much criticism for the way many people reacted in this discourse or the ways that they interpreted it, there were also a lot of men in the comments who were further ahead, right? That have evolved, that did have a lot more nuance, that really were trying to push back on the men, which I've said over and over. I always appreciate so much because as a woman, I can push back. I can say, no, that's not right. But for men who hate women, that's not gonna go that far. They don't care what I have to think or say. I understand that. They don't think women are smart. They don't trust them. So having men step up and say some of this is real masculinity, real male leadership. These are healthy, evolved men, and this is what we want to get more of, right? RFH also weighed in and said that she showed this Reddit post to her boyfriend, and he said, of course, it sounds insulting, but it's probably not what she was trying to convey, and that after 2.5 years, you should probably know better. And dude sounds majorly insecure. Imagine dating men who aren't normal. Couldn't be me. As I responded to her, my husband said almost the exact same thing, and it seemed like that was the reaction of most men in successful relationships. A guy with the handle Southtown MSP said, I've been married for 23 years and I completely understood the compliment being made here. I don't get the controversy. Another guy said, we talked about this briefly at my happy hour last night. I was gobsmacked at the logic leap from some men. Quote, she sees me as marriage material, so she definitely wants to screw other men. Like, what? Like seriously, what? That is so that's I can't wrap my mind around it. Like that was the dominant thing they were saying is like this is the kind of woman that will eventually cheat on you. So she wants to marry you because she wants to eventually cheat on you. Like I promise you hardly anybody goes into a marriage thinking like I can't wait to eventually cheat on you. No, somebody who wants to marry you is in love with you and super into you and super attracted to you. That is ridiculous. And furthermore, women who do cheat, we have a good bit of data around this. Women are often cheating when they are being neglected. And I'm not in any way validating it. Cheating is awful. I think it's disgusting. It's abhorrent. In no way am I like giving them a pass on that. But what motivates them to cheat is not like some six pack alpha coming by in his Lambo. Like, gross. That's not it. It's literally more likely to be like the guy next door who starts like actually taking an interest in her life when her husband's ignoring her, who compliments her, who maybe like brings her flowers at the office one day. Like it is usually women who are looking for validation that they're not getting from their husband who cheat. Okay. Another woman weighed in. She said, my husband doesn't see what's offensive about this. And I think it's because he doesn't use social media and doesn't watch porn. Oh my gosh. Yes. Like sometime we're going to have a whole episode on porn and how it affects men. But not today. Another person weighed in. I love this guy's comment. His handle's at Gerald L. Hill. And he said, I think the only reason I read that and think something a little differently is because in college, on more than one occasion, I had a girl tell me I wasn't boyfriend material. There were some non physical attributes I needed to change. And as you can see from this profile picture, this is like a good looking, handsome guy. And I said, we love a self aware man. I mean, this is true. Like, so often women are really attracted to a guy physically and still do not want to be in a relationship with him because they recognize that he's immature or he has other flaws. I like this post. I'll read in closing. It's from an account by the name CJ on Twitter. And she said, yes, this whole debate enforced for me the whole men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing. We're speaking two wholly different languages, have two wholly different sets of motivations, and only one, generally, tries to understand the perspective and motivations of the other. Because a world made by man made motivations is the world we all live in, and that's just the way it is. It's exhausting to see the red pills put the male sexual perspective on young women, though. They couldn't be more wrong, but they refuse to see they're viewing female behavior through a male lens, not what women actually do or what our motivations actually are. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. I think that people need to be much more intellectually curious about people they don't know. And I think that if you're somebody who gets like sucked into these kinds of conversations and that you're easily led to believe very negative things about men or women, pay attention to what you're consuming. Go talk to real men and women in real life. I promise it will like shield you from having a lot of these false perceptions about people. And I even have to do this myself. I told my husband the other day when I was watching TikTok, I was like, every time I go on TikTok lately, it is just straight anti man content. Okay. And not just like male bashing, but it's like women talking about being cheated on, women talking about finding out like their, husband had a whole other family, like just really atrocious stories about men behaving badly. But if you sit there and you consume that for like 2 hours, you're like, oh my God, men are scary and bad and evil. And then, I'm kind of looking at my husband sideways, like, what'd you do today? Right. That's what's happening to a lot of these red pill guys. They don't know any women in real life. That's quite apparent, but they are not checking their premises. They're not recognizing how these social media algorithms are affecting their worldview. And they're not interacting with women in a way where that can be countered or checked. So I hope this kind of conversation for those who are actually willing to listen and learn was valuable. It was really valuable for me. It did give me a better understanding of why some of these men have the mentalities that they do. And while I disagree that they are factual, I think once you have a better understanding of where people are coming from, you can more meaningfully debunk it. So, all right, we'll wrap there. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. If you like the show, don't forget to check out others in the series, Histrionics here. And you can watch my other weekly show, the Base Politics Podcast, here.